Hey, what's up guys? Today is Sunday, June 14th. It's around 1:40 p.m. and about 16 degrees Celsius outside or 61 degrees Fahrenheit. The plan for this walk is to head out of Summerhill's TTC subway station over to Yonge Street, where I'll walk south, down past Bloor Street to the lake. This is the first narrated walking video I've done on this channel. So you'll have to go easy on me in the comments if things don't go so well. I do appreciate your feedback though, so if there's anything I could do better, let me know and I'll try to incorporate that into future walks. So that was the Summerhill LCB or Summerhill TTC station I just left, which I believe is the 6th least busy station on the TTC subway network. And this is Yonge Street. Just to the north is St. Clair Avenue. But we are heading south down towards Bloor Street, which is where downtown begins, and then we'll head south down past Dundas Square and the Eaton Center, and I'll continue on towards the lake. So just here is the Summerhill LCBO station, or the LCBO liquor store, formerly the North Toronto train station, but it's currently functioning as the flagship liquor store for the LCBO. If there's any type of rare or vintage liquor you're looking for, whether it be an old bottle of wine or whiskey, this is probably the place where you'll find it in the city. They also have a pretty good selection of craft beer. These are the railway tracks we're walking under right now. Lately, when I've walked by, there's been quite a long lineup to get in. Thanks to this coronavirus pandemic, there has been a limit to the number of customers stores are allowed to have. So it looks like it's a good time to go stock up on your alcohol needs. This is a fairly affluent part of town. Just south of here is Rosedale, which we'll be passing through. There's a lot of very expensive homes. And just ahead is one of the few gas stations you'll be able to find here in the city, at least along the Yonge Street corridor. If you grew up in Toronto, you probably heard that Yonge Street is the longest street in the world. That was actually featured in the Guinness Book of Records up until, I think, 1999. But it's actually only 56 kilometers long. The idea that it was the longest street is based on the idea that Highway 11, which runs north through the province, is actually part of Yonge Street. But I don't believe that to be the case. And there is the Shell. Often when I rent cars here in the city and I'm returning them, that's where I go to fill them up. And in case you're wondering, I was on public transit, so I do have a mask on. So if this sounds a little bit muffled or if there's a bit of a crinkling sound, that would be it. I'm sorry about that. Straight ahead, that really tall building on the left there is One Bloor East. And just in front of it is a shorter tower that has the Bay written on it. When I was growing up in the city, that tower, or the Bay Tower, and the CIBC one, which is right beside it, which is obscured, were easily the two tallest buildings at Yonge and Bloor. But since then, a number of significantly taller towers have sprung up, including that tall glass one straight ahead, which is the new Four Seasons Hotel in the trendy Yorkville neighborhood. A lot of these retail stores are open, but as I said, they are operating on a limited capacity. And unfortunately, the restaurants and cafes are still takeout only. Normally when I come downtown, I live in Midtown, so I'll often come down here and record a walk or two. And usually after recording one of these walks, I like to pop into a cafe, grab an iced coffee and a snack, or sometimes a lunch, sometimes even a cold beverage at a bar if I feel like it. But lately I haven't been able to do that, so I've kind of just been doing one walk at a time. So it's hard to imagine how many local businesses have been affected just by people like me who no longer frequent them. Okay, just up here on the left is the Rosedale subway station, which is also one of the least used subway stations on the network, even though it's just one stop from the most used subway station. So this is Crescent Road, and this leads straight into the Rosedale neighborhood. And that's Ramsden Park across the street. There has definitely been a large influx of food delivery cyclists on the streets since the coronavirus pandemic has hit us. If you live in the Toronto area, I prefer to use an app called Ritual, and what that does is it allows you to order your food and then you can go pick it up. So you're not paying a delivery fee, you're not paying any service fees, you're not obligated to leave a tip. So as long as you're in an area with a reasonable selection of restaurants, it's a much better alternative. Just the other day, I ordered a quarter pounder, fries, and a medium drink, and with tax and tip, it ended up costing around $20, $20 Canadian, which is quite absurd for what it is. So I try not to use the delivery services too much. This is the Bud Sugarman Parquet. Try to make it across this light. That's Ulmer Avenue on the left. If you follow that down, it goes through a very scenic valley and ends up passing through Rosedale to Bayview Avenue, which you could then, well, it's a major north-south artery that runs parallel to the Don Valley Parkway. And on weekends, Bayview is actually closed south of Rosedale Valley to cars. So you could take your bike there and go get a bit of exercise where you otherwise wouldn't be able to. At least not comfortably. It's going to be interesting to see how many of these businesses are still around in 4 or 5 months from now. I've certainly found myself shopping almost exclusively at Amazon. I bought one item from Best Buy. I haven't bought anything from any retailers. I haven't had a haircut since January, so I look quite ridiculous right now. People often ask me if I've tried this or that place, but Toronto's so big and has so many restaurants. It's a bit like when I lived in Korea, where I was teaching English, and people would ask me, "Oh, do you know Dave? Do you know Mike?" Well, Canada's got over 35 million people, so it's very unlikely. I kind of get that feeling with a lot of the more obscure places in the city. There's Canadian Tire, one of the major retailers. I've never really liked this particular location. It's always been a bit junky. I believe it's a franchise and not a corporate-owned store. The headquarters for Canadian Tire are up at Yonge and Eglinton. There's a much nicer corporate store down near Bay and Dundas. And that building right there is the Masonic Temple, formerly known as the Concert Hall. And it's the scene where I attended my first ever concert. I believe it was April 3rd, 1996. I saw the Foo Fighters there. One of the opening acts for them was Dishwalla, who turned out to be a one-hit wonder. And then I went back a few months later and saw the Gin Blossoms, who I'm not sure are around anymore. Okay. This is a bit of an interesting intersection. On the right we have Davenport Road, and on the left we have Church Street. Church Street ends up being one of the major north-south nodes through the city, and the Davenport runs east to west. And just to the right is the Yorkville neighborhood, which is one of the higher end, more affluent neighborhoods in the city. A lot of very expensive condos, high-end retailers, boutiques. It's not really the kind of place I shop. But I will say this is one of my favorite new condos in the city. It's quite nice to see something that isn't a generic class condo. And on the left is the Toronto Reference Library. Normally it would be packed with students studying. There's a lot of language schools in this neighborhood. So it's quite common for this area to have a lot of students from Brazil, Japan, China, Korea enrolled in English classes, and this is one of their favorite places to study. Actually, when I was an English teacher, I was doing some private tutoring, so I frequently met students in this area. There's one of the language academies right there. And that's just obnoxious, if you ask me. There's Tim Hortons. Looks like Starbucks is closed up. The sign's gone and it's boarded up. And this is the Yonge Bloor Line 2 entrance, which runs east to west. You can enter here and connect to Line 1. As I mentioned earlier, that is the busiest subway station in Canada. It serves something in the neighborhood of 200,000 people on the average weekday. There's one Bloor East. I believe that tower is 76 stories tall. And over here in the former Stollery site might possibly be one Bloor West. The construction seems to have stalled. But when all is said and done, it will be one of the tallest towers in the city and the tallest residential building in Canada. It's a look down Yorkville to the right. I think it'll be 85 stories. It's the city's first Nordstrom Rack location on the left. There's a bike share station. There's Chick-fil-A, which is famously closed on Sundays. Although between Popeyes and all the Korean and Taiwanese style fried chicken, I can't say I've even had the desire to try it yet. There's H Mart, one of our Asian grocers here in the city. And next to it is the Brass Rail, which is one of a dying breed of adult strip clubs. That Vietnamese restaurant we just walked by, Ginger, is one of my favorite. Having been to Vietnam, I appreciate the fact that it's really just all about the food there. There's no frills. The environment is very utilitarian. It's not expensive, and the food's basic but really good. And that's really what Vietnamese soup is all about. And just to the right on Charles Street is a gem of a Japanese restaurant called the Okonomiyaki House. There's a former Payless shoe store on the left. To the left is the CAA Theater. Formerly the Panasonic Theater. Before that it was the Imperial Theater, and before that it was the New Yorker Theater. I saw one of my first ever Broadway-esque type shows there called Forever Plaid way back in the day. It's part of the Mervish group of theaters. And that ugly building, I believe, is owned by the Church of Scientology. It has sat quite derelict for a very long time. So if you're paying those monthly fees to the Church of Scientology, that's what you're subsidizing. Manga fried chicken. There's been a surge in Taiwanese fried chicken and bubble tea in the city lately. And there's some fairly well-known Korean bar down there called Iwa. Seemed sometime back in probably the mid-2000s, there was a bit of a burrito craze going on in the city. And then we saw a lot of burger restaurants spring up, and that sort of became the hot thing. And now we're kind of basking in a renaissance of Asian food. There's a lot of really good ramen shops, Taiwanese and Korean fried chicken, a lot of poke bowls or poke bowls, I don't even know how to say it. This is one of the bubble tea shops. And here's a former, I believe it was called the Brownstone. It's a pretty popular bar and restaurant, but now it's going to be a hasty market. And on this block, where this new condo is springing up, is the former home of Barvolo. See if I can cross here. Yeah, there's no traffic. Over the last few years, we've lost a lot of great drinking spots in the city. There was the Victory Cafe, which was one of my favorite spots, in behind Honest Ed's at Bloor and Bathurst. There was Barvolo here, where admittedly I'd only been a few times, but I quite liked it. Clinton's, which was a bar in Koreatown near Christie and Bathurst, recently just closed. And now there's a rumor that the Rose and Crown at Yonge and Eglinton might be closing. But hopefully, with this surplus of commercial real estate springing onto the market, once the economy rebounds, we'll see a resurgence of local businesses. Okay, straight ahead is Wellsley Street. There's one of the poke restaurants. Someone can correct me on that if they want. Just to the left on Wellsley Street is Wellsley Station. And then you'll get the intersection of Church and Wellsley, which is sort of the heart of the village. And if you take Wellsley Street to the right, you'll run into Queen's Park, which is the provincial legislature. Sorry if I trip over my words from time to time. This is my first time doing this type of video, so bear with me. I'm sure I'll get better if I keep at it. If not, we'll just go back to me shutting up and having these quiet videos. The second video I ever tried to record for this channel was a walk from Midtown to downtown, and I got stopped by a homeless lady, or at least I thought she was, at the LCBO there, and she grabbed my camera and threw it on the ground. So this channel was off to a good start. I ended up going back home and re-recording that walk the next day, and I recorded it as a hyperlapse. Yonge Street has been under a constant state of change lately. It's always had a bit of a seedy reputation. It wasn't uncommon to see more undesirable people, ladies of the night, that type of thing on Yonge Street back in the 80s. But that slowly started to go away. A lot of the retailers that gave this street its sort of vibe or appeal, however you want to say it, have disappeared over the years. On the plus side, we've seen a small little bounty of new restaurants and things like that pop up. Okay, just up here on the left is one of the few, if not only, Wendy's in the city that I can think of. There's one more in the Path Network underneath the Scotia Plaza. And that clock tower you see sticking up on the right was part of a fire hall built in 1872. It was later part of the St. Charles Tavern. And now it's seen that site fall into the wrecking ball for condos. But fortunately, the city's requiring the developer to preserve it. It's a Plymouth Prowler. You don't see too many of those anymore. It's the Buddies and Bad Times Theater down that way. There's the Captain's Boil. It's a new seafood chain that's popped up. Domino's Pizza. Say what you want, but I order more than my fair share from them. And this condo here is sitting on the former site of Hoops, which was a pub. I believe there's a location down on Bremner in the South Core area. I used to go to that location quite often, or this one. So just on our left here is Carlton Street, and if you follow that all the way down to the end, it'll take you into the Cabbagetown neighborhood. And to the right is College Street. If you follow that to the right, that'll take you past to the University of Toronto and the entrance to Kensington Market, as well as through Little Italy. There's College Park, which I believe used to be one of the city's first department stores, currently occupied by a Winners, with a Metro supermarket in the basement. I don't think we'll be able to get a look at it, but to the left down here on Carlton Street is Maple Leaf Gardens, which was the former home of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But it was replaced by the Air Canada Centre sometime in the late 90s or early 2000s. I think the Beatles have played there. My mom told me she saw them in a concert. The Muhammad Ali fought there. So it's a pretty storied building. It's now serving as a ice rink for the Ryerson University, and as a Loblaws grocery store. One of the city's cannabis shops. I remember when this Wild Wing location opened, they didn't have their liquor license. So for quite a while they were operating as a wing restaurant, but they couldn't serve alcohol. I've never actually taken a good look at this mural. Ooh, it goes pretty high up. And there is the Aura, which I believe is the tallest residential tower in the city. There's a failed shopping mall in the basement. Sold a lot of retail condo units there. There was a promise to connect it to the Path, which is the city's underground shopping network, which runs under the financial district, but that hasn't happened yet. And every time I've been down there, it's been dead. So there's a lot of struggling retailers down there. And it's also got a Bed Bath & Beyond, which I'm almost certain they're taking a loss. It's a huge store, taking up prime retail space in the city, yet there's never more than a couple of people in line. And there's a Marshall's above that. And there's a look at College Park. Alright, so straight ahead is Gerrard Street. If you turn left here and go straight for quite a while, it'll take you through an interesting part of downtown and then into the East Chinatown neighborhood. Then if you keep going straight, it'll take you to Little India, or the Gerrard India Bazaar. It doesn't go very far to the right. There's the former Elephant Castle Bar on the right on the corner there. And it's across the street from the former Big Slice Pizza. I think I'll cross over to the other side of Yonge here. So, say Hot Star Taiwanese fried chicken shop next to a Coco. Those places have popped up everywhere. Hopefully everyone's okay. That building to the left with the RU on top is Ryerson University, occupying the former home of Sam the Record Man. There's the Chelsea Hotel. So Sam the Record Man was an iconic record store in the Toronto that operated, I think, until about 2007. It had these large spinning records that were neon for its sign. I believe they've been preserved and are now hanging over Dundas Square, so we'll take a look at that when we get there. There's another cannabis shop next to Zanzibar. kind of an iconic adult entertainment lounge. Strip club, I guess, is the correct word. And there's another location of Ginger. It used to be a lot bigger. Just to our right is Barbarian Steakhouse. This would be Elm Street. This area used to be full of arcades, low-cost clothing stores, but I mostly remember it as a kid as coming here to play arcade games and then walking up to Maple Leaf Gardens and seeing a Leaf game, stopping at the Big Slice for some pizza, but those days are long gone. There's a look at the Ryerson University Student Center where Sam the Record Man used to be. And I think just to the left of it used to be an A&A Records, which also had a large, somewhat iconic neon sign. And where that Tokyo Smoke is used to be an HMV, which was a record shop that is now defunct. Just as the MP3 revolution was taking hold, HMV kind of pivoted and started selling DVDs and video games, which soon followed in the digital format. And that was the end of them. And here on Edward Street, where that just to the left of that BMV Books was the world's largest bookstore. I'm not sure if it actually was, but that's what it was called. And I believe before that it was a bowling alley. There's the city's first Five Guys. Burgers are okay, but their fries are amazing. Sneakerheads in the city probably know that place pretty well. And this is the famous intersection of Yonge and Dundas. It's the Eaton Center on the right. I think H&M with its street front entrance is able to open, but the shopping mall is still closed, I believe. Usually this corner is a hotbed of buskers and preachers and that type of thing. There's a Yonge-Dundas Square straight ahead. And this hideous building full of billboards was under construction for the longest time. It used to be called Metropolis. I think it opened in 2007 or 2008, after about a decade of being under construction. It was previously occupied by a 24 theater AMC, but it's now owned by Cineplex. AMC's left Canada. And there's the Sam the Record Man sign. It's kind of in an odd place, but appropriately tacky, given the location with all the billboards and stuff around it. Where we're standing now used to be the world's largest jean store. I've seen pictures of it, and I know I've seen it, but I don't really remember it. And so this is a semi-private, quote-unquote, public square. It's often closed down for events during the summer. There is private security that looks after it. on the corner here is Shoppers Drug Mart, which used to be a Hard Rock Cafe. Which, if I'm not mistaken, was actually the first ever Hard Rock Cafe. Now, just like every other grand old building in the city, it's become a drugstore. You'll notice that there's a lot of Rexall and Shoppers Drug Marts pretty much on every street corner now. So to the left is the Ed Mirvish Theatre. Formerly the Cannon Theatre, and before that I believe it was the Pantages. It's probably best known for being the long-standing home of the original run of Phantom of the Opera. Oh, huge lineup here at Foot Locker. The Eaton Center all closed up. Those people in that lineup will be me. The first time any place is allowed to do haircuts in the city. So on the right is the Eaton Center, which is the most famous mall here in Toronto. The other major mall would be Yorkdale. And straight ahead is the financial district, as you can tell by all the large office towers sticking up. So look down Shooter Street, and I believe that condo there is called the Pantages. Bit of a homage to the theater that used to, or the current Ed Mirvish Theatre. There's the Elgin and Winter Garden. Firkin Pub. They're not even open for takeout. It's interesting. Some bars are open and they're keeping their restaurants active, and some aren't. So it'll be interesting to see if that was a profitable move or not. There's the Massey Tower, that one's called. Another new development. Corvette's looking pretty sharp. And this is Queen subway station. On the right there is Saks Fifth Avenue, which is now Canadian owned. The group that owns the Hudson's Bay department stores purchased it. So I bet a lot of Americans don't know that they're shopping Canadian when they go to Saks. I saw in one of Action Kids' videos that they basically had Saks Fifth Avenue in Manhattan boarded up like it was Fort Knox. There was barbed wire around it, Lots of private security. So that's Queen Street West. And to the left is Queen Street East. Yonge Street is the major east-west divide in the city. So if we headed down that way, we'd be going by City Hall, the old City Hall, and the Toronto sign. And that would take us into the Queen West, or the West Queen West neighborhood. And then you could continue on even further down into Parkdale. Here's one of the many Rexalls that have sprung up like a plague on the city. And this is Richmond Street. This would be considered the north end of the financial district. It's a one-way street which heads west. And just to the south of here is Adelaide Street, which is a one-way street which heads east. I used to work up in one of those towers, up around the 55th floor. That's Temperance Street. So this part of the city, I think, would be particularly hit hard from the current pandemic and the state of emergency, as all of these office towers are usually just filled with people Monday to Friday, and they all come out and buy lunch on those afternoons, pick up a lot of items and errands they need to run, and they're just pretty much everyone's been working from home lately, so all those businesses have lost their source of income. It's the former Trump Tower straight ahead, now known as the Regis, I believe. On the left is Craft. It's quite a large bar. I've been there a few times. I can't imagine they're doing that well, just as there's not too many condos in the immediate proximity here, and they're offering pickup. And this straight ahead is King Street. Entrances to King subway station on the corners. Starbucks is a common meetup spot.
Last week it was 30 degrees.
To the left is the King Edward Hotel and King Street East, and down there would be King Street West and the heart of the financial district. You keep heading a little further and you'll hit the theater district, where there's more Mirvish-owned theaters. Toronto's actually the third largest city in terms of Broadway productions or theater in North America, behind New York and Chicago. I'm not sure where it ranks for English-speaking theater in the world, but I'd imagine that London is ahead of it, but that might be it. That tall glass building there is Commerce Court West. And just in front of it, we can't see it, is Commerce Court North, one of the few Art Deco style skyscrapers in the city, and one of the first to ever pop up onto the skyline. There's another Rexall. If you're ever allowed to drink in public here, it might make a good drinking game. Take a shot every time you see a Rexall. Probably be in the hospital with alcohol poisoning in no time. There's the Marché, which is a buffet-style restaurant, which I'm sure is not operating throughout this pandemic. And this is Wellington Street. And straight ahead is Front Street. On the corner there is the Hockey Hall of Fame, which used to be at Exhibition Place. But they moved it into this former bank building. So it's good to see it's got a more prominent location. And those towers rising up are part of the new CIBC, which is the Canadian Imperial Bank complex. South of Front Street, a whole new district has popped up, or sprung up, known as the South Core. So there's a lot of new office towers and tall glass condos lurking behind Union Station, which we can't see right now. There's a look at the Hall of Fame. That's Meridian Hall, which used to be called the Hummingbird Center. And before that, I believe it was the O'Keefe Center. It's also been the Sony Center. So who knows what it'll be called next. And that is the L Tower, which I believe was originally to have a boot-shaped element to its design on the bottom. But they truncated it. So for this video, I'm actually using two different microphones. So I did a narrated cycling video for the first time last week, and I tried out the same thing. I hooked up an external microphone with a dead cat to sort of just dampen wind noise and stuff like that. And I went with the camera microphone, and I ended up using the microphone or the audio from the camera just because the way it handled wind, it just picked up my voice a little better. So I'm curious to see with this camera, which is the Osmo Pocket, versus walking and not riding quickly through the wind, which one will do a better job. So there's a nice view of the CN Tower and the South Core District. That's the Esplanade, which has a lot of bars and restaurants with outdoor patios on it, which I'm sure are struggling right now. Take a look. And those towers are part of the CBD, or Central Business District. That really thin one slicing through the sky straight ahead is 1 King West, and to the left of it is Scotia Plaza, and then you have the BCE towers to the left of that, and Royal Bank, which is the gold one, although it probably doesn't look gold, to the left of that. And now we are walking under the Gardiner Expressway, which is a highway that cuts through the south end of the city. There's been rumors of burying it underground, Boston style, like the Big Dig, for years, but that's never come into fruition. Lately, the idea seems to be reducing it to surface level. So basically just knocking it down and letting Lakeshore Boulevard operate in its place. Which I think is actually not a bad idea. In Seoul, Korea, there was a highway that ran right through the city. They actually infilled an old river to build it, called the Cheonggyecheon River. And they put a highway through it, and it kind of ripped up the whole neighborhood. And it was pretty much just a mess, a traffic jam all day. And I was wrong. That was the railway tracks we were walking under. Sorry about that. And that is the Gardiner Expressway, the highway. And what they did was they ripped up the highway and they restored the river and turned it into a beautiful park/walking spot for the citizens to enjoy. And they didn't replace the highway with anything. And the traffic congestion did not increase elsewhere in the city. So there are examples out there of removing highways that don't ultimately have an adverse effect. And if you are a motorist and you're going to cry because there's an extra 1 or 2 minutes on your commute, then I don't really feel sorry for you. The city has traditionally been built for the car and has accommodated the car, and cyclists and pedestrians have been an afterthought for so long. But it's nice to finally see some infrastructure changes happen for the good. Okay, so this is Lakeshore Boulevard East. And to the right is Harvard Street. And it says don't walk, but the coast is clear, so we're gonna walk. There's exactly a 0% chance you'll get a ticket for jaywalking in Toronto. So just do it safely. And straight ahead is Queens Quay. On the left side is Queens Quay East, and on the right side is Queens Quay West, and straight ahead is Lake Ontario, which is where I think I'll wrap this up. I've been looking like a crazy person talking to myself for long enough today. It is my first time doing this as well, so it's, to be honest, it's a little unnerving, but I've gotten used to it. If you're familiar with Action Kid, he's kind of inspired this type of video, but he goes out there holding a gimbal with a GoPro on it So he's got a pretty big rig already drawing attention to himself. And then he's kind of speaking out loud to himself as he walks. So I'm just holding a dinky little camera here. And I've got a mask on. So my face is somewhat obscured. So I don't really have any reason to feel like this is anything out of the ordinary, but still I'm sure if I do end up doing more of these, there'll be a comfort level that gets better. So hopefully I can look back at this walk and say, wow, that was bad. Okay, so
Gotcha.
So to the right is probably the busiest part of the waterfront trail. I've walked through there in several videos before and done some cycling videos. That's the Westin Hotel right there. Never stayed there, but I have been to some corporate type events there. You always got to be on the lookout for cyclists when you're crossing that path. So I'll just walk out straight here to the end of this pier or parking lot, whatever it is. Get a good look at the lake and the island airport, which it's a bit unusual not seeing planes coming and going from it. I'm not sure if the airline that operates out of it, Porter, has been getting any type of relief from the government, but I'm sure it'll be necessary. Hopefully, flights will resume. Once the international borders fully open up, I'm sure I'll be buying a ticket and going someplace far and taking a 2 or 3 week break from all of this. I got quite lucky buying a last minute ticket for my last vacation in January. It was mid-January and I had a project for work coming up in March and April, which is when I was originally planning on going away. So I just decided to take a last minute trip. I went out to Cambodia and Thailand on very little notice, and the timing couldn't have been any better because I would not have been able to go any later than that. And I got to experience 2 of my favorite countries while they're fully open without any restrictions. So the Toronto Island straight ahead. And well off to the right there is the island airport. And the city behind us. All right, I'm gonna call it a walk at this. So let me know in the comments your thoughts, any tips for improvements, or if you would just rather not see this kind of walk again. It's all good. I'm open to your feedback. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.